Two retired Marines. They'd served together for nearly 20 years. They trusted each other with their lives. But when it came to getting healthy, they couldn't have made more different choices. One of them started drinking extra virgin olive oil every night before bed. The other just laughed. That's just another internet trend. 3 months later, Cole collapsed on the floor of his own kitchen. He grabbed the right side of his abdomen, then he couldn't stand. Every breath felt like a knife being driven beneath his ribs. At the emergency room, doctors found an organ so badly damaged it had to be removed. But here's the part that makes no sense. It wasn't damaged because it had stopped working. It was damaged because it did exactly what it was designed to do. So how did a habit millions of people believe is good for the heart leave one retired Marine fighting through emergency surgery, while the friend who ignored every piece of advice walked away completely fine? This is Hidden Pathogens.
This is Hidden Pathogens?
Cole Bennett trusted Jack Morrison with his life long before he ever trusted him with health advice. They met during Marine Corps boot camp when they were 19. They survived 2 combat deployments together, shared foxholes, shared birthdays, shared the kind of memories neither man ever talked about once they came home. If one of them called at 2 in the morning, the other answered, no questions. That was the kind of friendship they had. Retirement, however, exposed something the Marines never could. Cole needed structure. He still woke before sunrise, still made his bed with military precision, still believed discipline could solve almost any problem. Jack believed he'd already earned the right to stop worrying. 20 years in the Marines bought me dessert, he liked to say. If the Marines couldn't kill me, cholesterol isn't going to. Every Thursday morning, they met for breakfast at the same neighborhood diner. Same booth, same waitress, same order. One morning, the conversation turned to their annual physicals. Neither man expected much. A little older, a little heavier, nothing unusual. Instead, both doctors told them the same thing. Their cholesterol was climbing. Not high enough for medication, not low enough to ignore. Make a few changes now, the doctor said. Your future self will thank you. Cole heard a warning. Jack heard a suggestion. That afternoon, one of them stopped at a grocery store on the way home. The other stopped for burgers. Neither man realized that one of those decisions was about to uncover a disease that had been hiding silently inside a body for years. And neither of them would see it coming. So Cole smiled. They left the clinic together. Jack pointed toward the burger place across the street. Lunch? Cole smiled. Not today. Jack raised an eyebrow. The cholesterol lecture already working? It got my attention. They pulled out of the parking lot and headed in different directions. Jack turned left. Cole turned right. Neither man realized that would be the most important turn either of them made that day. Cole drove to a neighborhood grocery store. He wasn't looking for a miracle. He was looking for something simple. Something he could actually stick with. As he walked through the cooking aisle, one shelf caught his attention. Rows of dark green bottles. Extra virgin olive oil. He picked one up and turned it over in his hands. His mind drifted somewhere it always did after conversations about heart disease. His father, 58 years old, a massive heart attack that came without warning. Cole still remembered sitting in the hospital waiting room, wondering if that would someday be him. The doctor's words echoed in his head. Small changes now can prevent big problems later. He placed the bottle in his cart. Across town, Jack was halfway through a cheeseburger when his phone buzzed. I bought the olive oil, Cole said. Jack laughed. You actually spent money on that? It can't hurt. Jack took another bite. My grandfather put butter on everything he ate. He also had 3 bypass surgeries. There was a long pause, then both men laughed. That night, Cole poured a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil into a small glass. It looked ordinary. It smelled ordinary. He swallowed it in one gulp. Nothing happened. The next night, he did it again. Then the next. Soon it became part of his routine. Lock the doors, brush his teeth, drink the olive oil, go to bed. 92 nights in a row. Cole believed he was building a healthier future, 1 tablespoon at a time. He couldn't feel what was happening beneath his liver. He couldn't hear it. He couldn't stop it. Because somewhere inside his gallbladder, a problem that had slept silently for years had just begun to wake up. And by the time it made itself known, it would be too late. So what was happening inside Cole's body during those 92 nights? Every evening, just before bed, the extra virgin olive oil traveled down his esophagus and into his stomach. A few minutes later, it entered the first part of his small intestine. That's when his digestive system did exactly what it had been designed to do. Cells lining his intestine detected the concentrated fat and released a powerful digestive hormone called cholecystokinin, or CCK. Think of CCK as your body's meal has arrived alarm. The message traveled through Cole's bloodstream to an organ about the size of a small pear tucked beneath his liver, gallbladder. Most people never think about it. They don't feel it. They don't even know it's there. But all day long, Cole's liver had been producing bile, a greenish digestive fluid that helps break down fats. The gallbladder's job was to store that bile until it was needed. And every night, CCK gave the same command. Squeeze. The muscular walls of the gallbladder tightened. Bile rushed through a narrow tube, called the cystic duct, before joining another duct that emptied into the small intestine. The process was fast, efficient, completely normal. Night after night, the same signal, the same squeeze, the same release. For most people, that's the end of the story, but not for Cole. Years before he ever bought that bottle of olive oil, tiny crystals inside his gallbladder had slowly clumped together, grain by grain, layer by layer. Eventually, they became gallstones. Some were no bigger than grains of sand. Others had grown to the size of marbles. Cole never felt them. Many people don't. Gallstones can remain silent for years, sometimes decades, without causing a single symptom. As long as they stayed still, they were little more than unwanted passengers. But every night, Cole's gallbladder contracted with force. Every night, those stones shifted. Most settled back into place. One of them didn't. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, one stone began drifting toward the narrow opening of the gallbladder. Closer, then closer still. Cole slept peacefully through every one of those nights. He woke before sunrise, worked out, met Jack for breakfast, laughed with his wife, never once suspecting that his own digestive system was quietly pushing a hidden threat toward disaster. Then, on the 92nd night, the stone finally reached the only place it could turn a healthy digestive reflex into a medical emergency. But what happened the moment that stone became stuck? 92 days after Cole bought that bottle of olive oil, he woke just after 2 o'clock in the morning. At first, he thought he'd slept in an awkward position. There was a dull ache beneath the right side of his ribs. Annoying, nothing more. He rolled onto his left side. The ache rolled with him. He sat upright. It grew sharper. Within minutes, the pressure became something else entirely. Deep, crushing, as if a fist had reached beneath his ribcage and refused to let go. Cole Bennett had spent 22 years in the Marines. He had fractured bones, dislocated a shoulder, walked away from an IED blast that left him with permanent ringing in one ear. Pain was something he understood. This wasn't pain. This was panic with a pulse. He swung his legs out of bed and headed toward the kitchen, hoping a glass of water might settle whatever this was. He made it halfway. The pain detonated. It shot through the right side of his abdomen and wrapped around his back like a tightening cable. His knees buckled. A drinking glass slipped from his hand and exploded across the tile floor. His wife, Melissa, bolted awake. Cole? She found him folded over the kitchen counter, one hand gripping the edge so tightly his knuckles had turned white, the other pressed beneath his ribs. His face was gray. Sweat poured from his forehead. His breathing came in short, shallow bursts. She reached for him. He flinched. "Don't!" His voice was barely a whisper. "Don't touch me." Melissa had seen him injured before. She had never seen fear in his eyes. She grabbed her phone. The paramedics arrived within minutes. Cole's heart was racing. His blood pressure was climbing. Every pothole on the way to the hospital sent another wave of agony through his abdomen. One paramedic gently pressed beneath his right rib cage. Cole cried out before the man's fingers had fully touched his skin. The paramedic exchanged a quick glance with his partner. Neither of them said what they were thinking. In the emergency department, blood was drawn. An IV was started. Powerful pain medication flowed into Cole's arm. It barely touched the pain. The emergency physician ordered an urgent ultrasound. The technician dimmed the lights and placed the probe against Cole's abdomen. She watched the screen, paused, measured something, then measured it again. She zoomed in, froze the image, printed it. Without saying a word, she stepped out of the room. When she returned, she wasn't alone. A radiologist walked in behind her. He studied the monitor for less than a minute. Then he quietly picked up the phone. 20 minutes later, a general surgeon entered Cole's room, carrying the ultrasound images. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't sit down. He looked directly at Cole and said 6 words that changed everything. "We're taking your gallbladder out today." But what did they see on that ultrasound that turned a healthy habit into an emergency operation? So what did the surgeon see that made him decide Cole's gallbladder had to come out immediately? The answer wasn't the olive oil. It was something the olive oil had uncovered. The ultrasound showed Cole's gallbladder was no longer the smooth, pear-shaped organ it should have been. Its walls were swollen, thickened, surrounded by fluid, signs that it had become severely inflamed. But that wasn't what concerned the surgeon most. He pointed to a bright white circle on the screen, then another, and another. Gallstones. Some were tiny, others were nearly the size of a grape. Most had probably been there for years without causing a single symptom. Then he froze one final image. "There," he said. A single stone had become lodged in the neck of the gallbladder, the one place it could stop bile from leaving. Imagine squeezing a tube of toothpaste with your finger pressed over the opening. The pressure has nowhere to go. That's exactly what had happened inside Cole's body. Every drop of bile his liver continued producing had become trapped behind the blockage. The gallbladder kept trying to contract, kept trying to empty itself, but nothing could get through. Instead, pressure built inside the organ, hour after hour. The trapped bile stretched the gallbladder until its walls began losing blood flow. The tissue became swollen, then inflamed, then dangerously close to becoming infected. If the blockage remained long enough, part of the gallbladder could begin to die. And if it ruptured, infected bile could spill throughout the abdominal cavity. That complication carries a significant risk of life-threatening infection. The surgeon looked back at Cole. "You don't need surgery because you have gallstones," he said. "You need surgery because one of them isn't moving." Cole stared at the ultrasound. His first question wasn't about the operation. It wasn't about recovery. It wasn't even about the pain. He looked at the surgeon and asked the one question everyone in the room was already thinking. Did the olive oil do this? The surgeon didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled up a chair. Why would an experienced surgeon hesitate before answering such a simple question? "You're asking the wrong question." The surgeon pulled a chair beside Cole's bed and placed the ultrasound images on the tray table. Cole frowned. "I don't understand." "The question isn't whether olive oil gave you gallstones," the surgeon said. "It didn't." Melissa looked confused. "Then why did this happen now?" The surgeon nodded. "That's the right question." He pointed to the largest stone on the scan. Based on its size, this didn't form over 3 months. He traced its outline with his pen. It probably didn't form over 3 years. Cole stared at the image. "So, I've had these all along?" "Most likely." The surgeon leaned back. Gallstones don't appear overnight. They grow slowly, sometimes over 5, 10, even 20 years. and most people never know they're there. Cole couldn't believe it. For years, he'd passed every physical, every blood test, every fitness assessment. He'd hiked mountains, finished marathons, carried heavy packs through combat zones, all while carrying stones inside an organ he'd never thought about. So why tonight? Melissa asked. If they've been there for years, why did one suddenly get stuck? The surgeon folded his hands. Because your gallbladder is a muscle. Every time you eat a meal containing fat, that muscle contracts. Most of the time, gallstones stay exactly where they are. Sometimes, one drifts. Most drift back. Occasionally, one reaches the narrow opening of the gallbladder at exactly the wrong moment. And when that happens, he continued, the next contraction can wedge it into the duct like a cork in a bottle. The room fell silent. Cole finally asked the question that had been bothering him since the ambulance ride. So if I hadn't started drinking olive oil, would this have happened? The surgeon didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked a question of his own. Did you ever eat cheeseburgers? Cole blinked. Of course. Pizza? Sure. Steak? Absolutely. The surgeon smiled. Every one of those meals makes your gallbladder contract too. Cole looked down. So it could have happened after any fatty meal? It could have happened after a cheeseburger, or bacon and eggs, or Thanksgiving dinner. He paused. Or after a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. Melissa exhaled slowly. So the olive oil wasn't the disease. No. It simply asked your gallbladder to do the job it was designed to do. The surgeon looked directly at Cole. The real problem had been hiding inside you for years. Cole sat in silence. For nearly 3 months, he'd believed he was fighting the disease he feared most, a heart attack. Instead, he'd uncovered one he never knew he had. But if the olive oil wasn't really to blame, why were doctors seeing more people discover silent gallstones after changing their diets or starting rapid weight loss plans? The surgery itself wasn't the part that worried the surgeon. It was what could happen if they waited. By sunrise, Cole had signed the consent forms. The plan was straightforward. A laparoscopic cholecystectomy, 4 small incisions, a tiny camera, specialized instruments. If everything went as expected, the operation would take less than an hour. The surgeon stood beside Cole's bed one last time. I know this sounds sudden, he said, but your gallbladder has already told us it's in trouble. What happens if we wait? Cole asked. The surgeon didn't hesitate. The pressure keeps building. He pointed to the ultrasound again. Right now, the gallbladder is inflamed. If that stone stays lodged, the blood supply can be cut off, and tissue without blood begins to die. Melissa swallowed hard. And if that happens, the gallbladder can rupture. The room fell silent. Bile and bacteria can leak into the abdomen. That can become a life-threatening infection. Cole nodded. So, this isn't about stopping the pain. No, it's about preventing something much worse. An hour later, bright operating room lights filled Cole's vision. The anesthesiologist placed a mask over his face. Take a few deep breaths. The room faded. When Cole opened his eyes again, the surgery was over. Melissa was sitting beside his bed. It went well, she whispered. A few hours later, the surgeon returned carrying several photographs. Images taken during the operation. He pointed to one. This is your gallbladder. Instead of smooth and green, it looked swollen, angry. Its outer surface was deep red, with patches that had already begun turning dark. Then he showed the next image. The gallbladder had been opened after removal. Several stones spilled onto a metal tray. Some were no larger than peas. One was nearly the size of a large marble. The surgeon picked up the largest one with a pair of forceps. This, he said quietly, is what brought you here. Cole stared at it. 3 months earlier, he'd been worried about cholesterol. Now he was looking at the object that had nearly cost him an organ, and possibly much more. I keep thinking about Jack, Cole said. He thought I was chasing another health fad. The surgeon smiled. Tell him something for me. Cole looked up. Healthy habits don't create hidden disease. They often reveal it. That sentence stayed with Cole long after the pain had faded. But if the gallbladder was gone, how would his body digest fat for the rest of his life? Before we continue, if you're fascinated by real medical mysteries like this, share this video and subscribe to this channel. And if you value these videos, there's a free link in the description and pinned comment that helps support the channel. Every bit of click helps us continue researching and telling these stories, and it's completely free. Now, let's continue. 5 days after surgery, Cole stood in his kitchen staring at his dinner: grilled chicken, brown rice, steamed vegetables. It wasn't exactly the feast he'd imagined after leaving the hospital. Melissa noticed he hadn't touched his fork. "You okay?" Cole nodded, then shook his head. "I don't know." She pulled out a chair beside him. "What are you worried about?" He looked down at the plate. "I spent 3 months trying to eat healthier. I still ended up losing an organ." He paused. "And now I don't even know if I can eat fat anymore." 2 days later, he brought the same question to his follow-up appointment. The surgeon smiled. "That's probably the most common question I hear." He opened a diagram of the digestive system. "Most people think the gallbladder makes bile. It doesn't." He pointed to Cole's liver. "Your liver makes bile every minute of every day. It never stopped before surgery. And it hasn't stopped now." Cole frowned. "So what was my gallbladder actually doing?" The surgeon reached for a reusable water bottle sitting on his desk. "Think of your liver as a faucet that's always running." He slowly poured water into a glass. "It never turns off." Then he held up the bottle. "Your gallbladder was simply the storage bottle. It collected bile between meals. When you ate something fatty, a steak, pizza, fried chicken, or even a spoonful of olive oil, it squeezed all that stored bile into your small intestine at once. It was a reservoir, not the factory." Cole sat quietly. "So now, there's no reservoir." "Exactly. The bile flows straight from your liver into your intestine instead. A slow, steady stream. It isn't as concentrated, but for most people, it's more than enough." The surgeon leaned back. "In fact, more than 500,000 Americans have their gallbladders removed every year. And the overwhelming majority go back to living completely normal lives." Cole looked surprised. "Really?" The surgeon nodded. "Your digestive system is one of the most adaptable systems in the human body. Over the next few weeks, your bile ducts will widen slightly. Your intestines will become more efficient. Your body will learn a new routine." Cole let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "So eventually, I can have a burger again?" The surgeon laughed. "Eventually. Just don't celebrate with 3 of them." For the first time in weeks, Cole laughed too. That weekend, Jack came over carrying takeout. He placed 2 bags on the kitchen counter. "I wasn't sure what people without gallbladders eat." Cole opened the bag. Grilled chicken, rice, vegetables. He looked at Jack. "You've changed." Jack shrugged. "I watched them wheel my best friend into surgery. I figured I should start listening to doctors a little more." The 2 retired Marines sat together in comfortable silence. For the first time since the attack, dinner didn't come with fear. It came with relief. But before Cole left, the surgeon gave him one final warning. "The surgery fixed today's problem. It doesn't mean every attack like yours needs surgery immediately. Some patients can safely wait, others have only hours. So how do doctors know when a gallbladder attack has crossed the line from painful to life-threatening?" The morning Cole was discharged, the surgeon stopped him just before he reached the elevator. "One last thing." Cole turned around. "I don't want you leaving here thinking every gallbladder attack is the same." Jack and Melissa stopped too. The surgeon folded his arms. "Some people have an attack that lasts an hour. The stone slips back where it came from. The pain disappears. Doctors call that biliary colic. It's painful, but it usually isn't permanently damaging the gallbladder. Those patients often go home, follow up with a surgeon, and schedule surgery later." Cole nodded. So mine wasn't that? The surgeon shook his head. No, your stone stayed trapped. And that's when the clock starts. He opened another patient's ultrasound on the computer. This man was 58. He thought he'd eaten bad barbecue. The pain started on a Friday night. He decided to wait until Monday. He never made it to Monday. Melissa looked up. What happened? The pain actually got better. Cole frowned. Wouldn't that be a good sign? That's what he thought. The surgeon clicked to the next image, but the pain faded because part of his gallbladder had stopped receiving blood. It wasn't healing. It was dying. The room became silent. He pointed to the swollen organ on the screen. When a stone blocks the outlet, bile has nowhere to go. Pressure builds. The swelling squeezes the tiny blood vessels, feeding the gallbladder wall. Without oxygen, the tissue begins to die. That's called gangrenous cholecystitis. He advanced to another image. The gallbladder no longer looked intact. A dark gap had opened along one side. The wall ruptured. Cole stared at the screen. What happens after that? Bile, bacteria, digestive enzymes. They spill into the abdominal cavity. What started as one blocked duct becomes an infection involving the entire abdomen. Then comes sepsis. Jack crossed his arms. So waiting can actually make the pain go away. Because the organ is dying? The surgeon nodded. And that's one of the most dangerous misconceptions. People think less pain means they're getting better. Sometimes, it means they've run out of healthy tissue left to hurt. Nobody spoke. Melissa instinctively reached for Cole's hand. The surgeon looked directly at all three of them. This is why we tell people not to ignore severe pain under the right ribs, especially if it lasts for hours. If you develop fever, persistent vomiting, yellowing of the skin or eyes, or pain so intense you can't take a deep breath, don't wait for morning. Don't search the internet. Go to the emergency room. Cole felt a chill. For weeks, he'd blamed the bottle of olive oil sitting on his kitchen counter. Now he realized something much more unsettling. The olive oil hadn't been the real danger. The real danger was carrying a disease silently for years and mistaking its first warning for something that could wait. As they walked toward the elevator, Cole asked one final question. If gallstones can hide inside someone for decades, why do some people get them while others never do? A week after his follow-up appointment, Cole couldn't stop thinking about one question. If gallstones had been hiding inside him for years, how many other people were walking around with them right now? At his next visit, he asked the surgeon, "Why me?" The surgeon leaned back. "I wish I had a simple answer. The truth is, millions of people have gallstones and never know it." Cole looked surprised. Millions? The surgeon nodded. Roughly 1 in every 10 to 15 American adults has gallstones. Most will never have a single symptom. They'll live their entire lives without knowing they're there. Jack frowned. So why did Cole have an attack? Because gallstones are like sleeping volcanoes. Most stay quiet forever, but nobody can predict exactly which one will erupt. The surgeon pulled up a model of a gallbladder. Gallstones form when the chemicals inside bile fall out of balance. Most are made almost entirely of hardened cholesterol. Think of making rock candy. If there's too much sugar in the water, crystals begin to form. The same thing can happen inside bile. Tiny cholesterol crystals, then larger crystals, then stones. Cole crossed his arms. So what causes that? A combination of genetics, age, body weight, certain medications, rapid weight loss, and sometimes nothing we can identify. Melissa looked confused. So someone can eat well, exercise, and still develop gallstones? Absolutely. The surgeon nodded. I've removed gallbladders from marathon runners. I've removed them from people who never touched fast food. I've removed them from patients in their 20s, and others in their 80s. Jack looked over at Cole. So this wasn't because you started taking better care of yourself. No, it was because the gallstones were already there. The olive oil simply made the gallbladder do exactly what it was designed to do. Cole thought back to the bottle sitting on his kitchen counter. For weeks, he'd looked at it like it had betrayed him. Now he saw it differently. The real problem hadn't been inside the bottle, it had been inside his body. Long before he ever opened it, the surgeon stood and gathered Cole's chart. There's one more thing most people don't realize. Once someone has one gallstone, they often have several. Cole remembered the metal tray, the small stones, the large one, the one that nearly changed everything. If millions of people are carrying silent gallstones, should everyone be screened before one becomes an emergency? 3 months after surgery, Cole was back where this story began. The same medical office, the same waiting room, the same doctor. But this time, he wasn't clutching his side. He wasn't pale. He wasn't wondering if he was about to lose an organ. He was simply there for a follow-up. The doctor reviewed his blood work. Everything looked normal. His liver enzymes had returned to normal. The inflammation was gone. His incisions had healed beautifully. "You've made a full recovery," the surgeon said. Cole smiled. "I still catch myself reaching for the right side of my stomach." The surgeon laughed. "A lot of people do. It's strange how quickly the mind adapts, and how long the body remembers." Jack had driven him to the appointment. As they walked toward the parking lot, he asked the question that had been bothering him for weeks. "So, should I get checked?" Cole looked at him. "For gallstones?" Jack nodded. "If millions of people have them, how do I know I'm not one of them?" It was a reasonable question, one that doctors hear all the time. Cole brought it up before leaving. The surgeon shook his head. "Not unless you have symptoms." Jack looked surprised. "You mean you wouldn't even scan me?" "No, because finding silent gallstones usually doesn't help the patient." He explained that modern ultrasound machines can easily detect gallstones. The problem wasn't finding them, it was deciding what to do with the information. If someone has gallstones but they've never caused pain, never blocked a duct, never caused infection, we usually leave them alone. Melissa frowned. "Even if you know they're there?" The surgeon nodded. "Because the vast majority will never cause trouble. Operating on every silent gallstone would expose hundreds of thousands of healthy people to unnecessary surgery. The risks would outweigh the benefits." Cole thought about that. "So if you'd scanned me a year ago, you probably wouldn't have removed it anyway." "Exactly." The surgeon smiled. "We don't treat pictures. We treat patients." The words stayed with Cole long after they left. For months, he'd wondered if this whole ordeal could have been prevented. Now he understood the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes medicine knows something is there, and the safest decision is still to leave it alone. Jack started the truck. "You know, I think I'm done making fun of internet health trends." Cole laughed. "I think I'm done believing every one of them." The two retired Marines drove home the same way they always had. Windows down, country music playing, talking about everything except hospitals. Life had finally started to feel normal again. But before Cole closed the passenger door, the surgeon had left him with one final piece of advice. "It wasn't the olive oil that nearly put you on my operating table. It was assuming a healthy habit could never uncover a hidden problem. So how can someone enjoy the proven benefits of extra virgin olive oil without repeating the mistake that nearly changed Cole's life forever?" Before you pour that bottle of extra virgin olive oil down the sink, there's something you need to know. Cole Bennett's story is unusual. Not because gallstones are rare. They're not. Millions of Americans are walking around with gallstones right now and have absolutely no idea they're there. Most never will. The olive oil didn't create Cole's gallstones. It didn't poison him. It didn't damage his gallbladder. It simply asked his gallbladder to do what it had done every day of his life. Contract. Release bile. Help digest fat. The problem was, this time, there was a stone waiting at the exit. That distinction matters, because extra virgin olive oil remains one of the most extensively studied foods in the world. When used as part of a balanced diet, research has consistently linked it with better heart health, healthier cholesterol levels, and a lower risk of cardiovascular disease. But somewhere along the way, the science became social media. Videos promised that drinking large amounts before bed would flush the liver, melt gallstones, clean the gallbladder, or detox the body overnight. None of those claims are supported by good medical evidence. Jack laughed. So those videos showing people passing hundreds of green stones aren't real? The surgeon smiled. They're real, but they aren't gallstones. They're soft clumps created during the flush itself. Real gallstones don't simply dissolve because someone drank a cup of oil. Cole looked down at the bottle sitting on his kitchen counter. 3 months earlier, he had blamed it for everything. Now he understood. The bottle had never changed. His understanding had. A few weeks later, Jack came over for dinner, just like he had dozens of times before. Only this time, there were no hospital bracelets, no pain medication, no surgical drains, just 2 retired Marines standing over a backyard grill. Jack watched as Cole drizzled a little extra virgin olive oil over grilled vegetables before carrying them to the table. He couldn't help smiling. So, "We're using it again?" Cole smiled back. "I never stopped believing healthy food was healthy. I just stopped believing the internet knows my body better than my doctor." Jack laughed. "I guess that's one trend I'm skipping." They sat on the back patio as the sun disappeared behind the trees. For the first time in months, they didn't talk about hospitals. They talked about fishing, their grandkids, football season. Normal life had finally returned. Cole looked at the bottle sitting in the middle of the table. 3 months ago, he saw the reason he lost an organ. Now he saw something else. A reminder, not that healthy habits are dangerous, but that no healthy habit can erase a disease that's already hiding inside you. Sometimes, the healthiest decision you make doesn't prevent the emergency. It reveals it early enough for doctors to save you. 2 retired Marines, 1 healthy habit, 1 hidden disease neither man knew existed. Jack ignored the trend, and nothing happened. Cole followed it and discovered a silent disease that had probably been growing for years. Ironically, the habit everyone blamed may have prevented something even worse, because if that gallstone had stayed hidden, it might have blocked his gallbladder months later, while he was driving, traveling, or completely alone. The olive oil wasn't the villain. The gallstones were. And the pain wasn't the enemy either. It was the warning that finally exposed them. Sometimes your body whispers for years, before it has no choice but to scream. The question isn't whether you'll hear that scream, it's whether you'll listen before it's too late. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. These stories take a lot of research to put together. If you'd like to support the channel, you'll find a free link in the description and pinned comment. Checking it out helps support future videos, and every click allows us to keep bringing these cases to the channel. Also, it's completely free. If you learned something from this case, like, share, and subscribe for more real medical stories. And if you chose not to subscribe, leave a comment and tell me what would make these videos better. I read far more comments than you might think. This is Hidden Pathogens. I'll see you in the next diagnosis. Good night.
This is Hidden Pathogens?